Welcome to Fractional Focus, the Quickly Hire podcast where we spotlight exceptional fractional professionals who are helping businesses scale and thrive. I'm your host, Brad Morrison. Today we're joined by Hugh Matthias, a branding expert from the UK who took an unconventional path to design. After leaving the corporate world in 2014, Hugh now creates stunning brand identities and websites from Spain while pursuing his lifelong passions for fine art and photography. Hello, I'm happy to be joined today by Hugh Matthias. Hugh, thanks for joining the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hugh has been a Quickly Hire Pro for a while and had several successful engagements. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to interview Hugh and talk a little about his secrets to having successful engagements. But first, Hugh, why don't you tell us a little about your background?
Sure. Well, I've I guess I've taken maybe a little bit of an unconventional journey into being a designer. I've always been creative and artistic. I grew up, painting, drawing. My mother said that, by the age of 2, I was holding a pencil or something. And so, I've always had that artistic and creative drive. And when I was graduating from sort of sixth form college, my professors wanted me to go and do an art degree, but I had a bee in my bonnet about traveling and I was very interested in movies too. So I went off and did a film degree, which had a year of placement in the United States. A really great school in Boulder, CU Boulder. So I went off there and I had that experience, and I did some internships on the West Coast as well with some quite well-known film companies. And then I came back to the UK to do my final year, and then I kind of just drifted to London. And I thought about working in the movie industry, but very competitive, very difficult to get into. You have to kind of essentially work for free for the first year or two, being a runner or whatever. So that kind of wasn't an option for me really after university. You come out of uni, you've got bills to pay. So I got a job, and wasn't really directly design related, but within about 6 years after I was in London and I'd done, worked in various professional jobs, and I decided, right, it's time for me to refocus, get back into design. So I got a foot in the door in the corporate presentations, desktop publishing world, and I worked there for a few years. That was when I was at 30. And so kind of, I guess I got back into design a bit later than someone who would, had done a design degree and then started in their early 20s. It took like I said, meandering path, but I started in the corporate world, then I sidestepped into a graphic design role, and I was doing that pretty much up until around 2014. And then I'd wanted to work for myself for quite a while, found the corporate world. I mean, I learned a huge amount there, but quite regimented, and decided to take a chance on being a freelancer. And I set up my own small design practice, and I managed to, I find some clients through contacts. I was lucky enough to do that, and I built up business that way. And so, since 2014, I've been fully freelance pretty much. I've done the odd stint of sort of contract work back in the UK, but in 2016, I also got residency in Spain. I decided to act before Brexit pulled the drawbridge up. And it's one of the best things I ever did. I got my residency here, so I've been dividing my time between here and the UK as a freelancer. Worked with many, many different clients in many different industries. My focus is primarily branding, design, along with website design, social media graphics, and presentations. That's been the core. But I've also done, many print projects as well. And I've been really blessed with some amazing experiences and projects. And, it's been a real journey of evolution, often a roller coaster, as a freelancer. It's not always plain sailing. So, just have to get creative in life. And, one of the things I learned is, I can't rely solely on it as a kind of an income. So I've been in the process of setting up different streams of revenue, of income right now, because I'm also, my core as well, I'm also an artist. So I did a lot of painting and drawing in my childhood, teenage years. I'm now finding myself moving back to that as well as a kind of a heart-led hobby.
Are you taking on like commission work for folks,
Not
or are you doing?
yet, not yet. But
Okay.
I recently, I did a few digital art pieces back in February. I was in the UK, and there are some pieces that I wanted to create for a while, and I sat myself down and said, right, get these done, because you've been wanting to do them for ages. So I did them, and within 24 hours of publishing them, 2 people bought a print. And it's kind of a good reminder that the artistic side of design and the real visionary side of it, the creative side, is kind of where I really love being.
Yeah, you can tell just in your story, the creativity and your passion for that is the kind of central theme. Also, I really love the way you've diversified or looking to diversify income streams to build the life that you want.
Exactly. And this is one of the things I love about Quickly Hire, is enable me to take on different types of contracts. Some have been 15 hours a week, some have been 20 or 30, and I really like that model because it allows me to build my other passions around my work. And it really gives my time that balance. Which is really important to me. I love graphic design work. I love working with clients. I love delivering creative solutions for them. And I also like having days where I go off and do something completely different, whether it's, just going out for a walk in nature, or, going to the beach, or working on my art, whatever it is. I just really like the business model because it gives me, that flexibility, that balance.
Could you speak to some of the types of projects that you've taken on and helped clients with?
Sure. I mentioned branding earlier. I think my first Quickly Hire client was interested in sort of refreshing a core brand that their client had, and also creating new concepts for another offering that the client wanted to sort of get rolling. And I helped with that to help them come up with some concepts which they really loved. And, it was really nice to get positive feedback for that one. And then also did some UI for that client too, which again, they, said that it was a seamless experience for them, integrating my skills into their workflow. And that was also, enjoyable project to work on. And then there's also been other website design projects for smaller companies. There was one in the US. It was a sort of a small boutique design company led by a lady in Kansas. And I created the UI for a new website, and she was really thrilled with that. She was going through a bit of a revamp of her look and feel of her branding and the offering. I mean, she had a very simple website, but, we kind of reworked it. Yeah, she was very, very happy with that. And through her, I also got to a new website UI for one of her principal clients in the Kansas City area, which is another really fun project to work on. And then I've also worked with the clients in the West Coast. Again, website design, UI design, and more general graphic design, working on invitations and event collateral. So that was quite varied.
Sometimes a client might even have pretty rigid processes or the way they communicate because that's what they've known, right? And sometimes it takes an engagement with a pro to realize, okay, we can change some of this to adapt to talent somewhere else in the world. How do you approach communication with a client?
Yeah, sure. Well, my communication methods are a mixture of all of those things you mentioned: email, Slack, and video calls. And what I think is really helpful is having a regular kind of structured contact framework, communication framework. I do find Slack really helpful because it's just a really good and helpful way to communicate, aspects of different tasks, updates, and there's all the team members there as well. So I've used Slack with a number of clients, with I think 2 of the contracts I've worked on, but I've also valued the kind of like the weekly video check-ins, either with a one-on-one with one of the team members or the whole team, like a group Zoom call. Yeah, I think that's really helpful. So I guess it's mostly more of those 2 rather than email, or do use email as well. But oftentimes it's like the client will have their own ecosystem with Gmail, with Slack, and they will bring me into that. So I will then be within the system interacting with all the team members that way. I just think that structured, catch-ups are really helpful, and having things responded to, feedback given within a reasonable time frame, certainly within a day or 2, that really helps as well. So I guess being a tropical Virgo, my penchant for structure and organization, it plays a part.
I'm with you, by the way. So yes, I completely understand that. When you're coming into an organization and you're talking to them about a brand redesign, what does that process look like at a high level?
It's a good question, because the last client I had through Quickly Hire, I was suggesting a rebrand for one of their flagship clients, and I was discussing that with the head of the agency, and we had numerous discussions about it. And I was asking her, do you think they'd be interested in that? Who are the stakeholders? Who are the decision makers? And do they have the budget for it as well? So it's asking these key kind of fundamental questions to, get an idea of where the top brass is at, what their thinking is. Are they happy with the current brand? Do they feel it's a little bit outdated? Do they want to revamp it? And this one situation, I did feel that, the brand that the client had was a little bit dated, and it could really benefit from a refresh, because I don't think they'd updated it in a long time. And that, for me, was reflecting in the collateral and in a lot of that. And there wasn't a lot of brand consistency either. So, this was the end client, not the quickly hired client. But so as a brand designer, as a logo designer, somebody who's passionate about that, when I see that, my creative drive gets a bit twitchy, and I want to see what the scope is. So it's always a case of, for me, being, well, first of all, diplomatic, tactful in the approach, and then intuiting who the best people to have those conversations with are. And I think from that point, if you follow those channels, then it can flow. But I think there's a certain sequence that needs to be done in.
I've faced that at numerous times over my entrepreneurial career, where it's like, this isn't great, it isn't consistent, but it's what we got, so let's put it out there. And then having a company like Quickly Hire with extremely talented pros makes it a lot easier to bring someone in to be able to address those needs that we have.
Yeah.
Changing gears a bit, what things do you enjoy doing in your spare time?
I've recently got back into art. Last year, I was given a wonderful present by friends for my 50th, because I turned 50 last year. And that was, there's a guy called Alan Ramiro. He runs an online platform. He's a former architect, and now he's into architectural sketching. He travels around the world creating watercolor and ink sketches of places. Could be southern Spain, Lisbon, which is where he lives, Morocco, Brazil, Mexico. I mean, he goes all over, and he gets private tuition. And I had never heard of him before that. And friends got me a 4-hour private lesson with him in Lisbon. So I flew to Lisbon last September and I spent the afternoon with him and we just sat and sketched, and it was really fantastic. And through that, I started doing his online workshops. He does like a month-long series of workshops on a different place. Like he's just done one on Paris. I think this month is south of Spain. And he also does in-person retreats and travel events. So I'm getting more into doing that, which is wonderful. Sort of rediscovering my passion for fine art, physical art, watercolors and pen and ink drawings. I also love to travel. So I travel whenever I can.
Do you have a favorite place?
Yeah, I do. Mexico. I love Mexico. I've been to the Riviera Maya, Playa del Carmen, and I've been to the various places in the Yucatan, seen some of the Mayan sites, and then I've spent time in Mexico City, spent time in Puerto Vallarta, further down south. There's a place called Puerto Escondido. I kind of, traveled around. Oh gosh, I just love it. I could live there. So that's kind of been one of my favorites so far. But I also love places like Thailand and the States. I've spent a lot of time in the States. I've lived there. Yeah. My former partner is from there. Still very close, but I had a partner that was from there. I've spent a lot of time there, just organically. Canada also. So just, those are some of my favorites.
So Hugh, I know another hobby of yours is photography. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I think this ties in with, from a young age with my love of imagery and image composition, movies. So I've always had an eye for, capturing images that really resonate with me. And what I've discovered, or new blending that I've discovered recently, is taking something that I've taken taking a photograph of, or taking something that I've taken a photograph of, and blending it with something that I have sketched of the same thing, or blending it with a sketch of the same thing. So it's kind of, I've actually done a few pieces of these and I've given them to people for gifts, which they've really loved. So it's kind of, it's something I'm exploring at the moment. It's a new thing I'm exploring. It's one of the other things that I love to do, is go out with my camera and just capture images and put them in Lightroom and blend them with some of the art pieces and see what happens.
That sounds so neat. Well, it's been awesome getting to learn a little bit more about you. Thank you for all of the incredible work that you do for Quickly Hire and for our clients. We have gotten just so much positive feedback from the engagements that you've been on and the help that you provide. So you have a very deep skill set and our clients love you. So really appreciate that.
Thank you. It means a lot.
Well, thank you again, Hugh, for joining us. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Likewise, Brad. Thank you for having me on the podcast. And I really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you for tuning in to Fractional Focus. If you're a skilled professional looking to build your fractional career, or a founder seeking top-tier talent without the full-time commitment, visit quicklyhire.com today. Subscribe for more conversations with exceptional professionals who are redefining the future of work.